Thank you. Good evening and welcome to our first meeting of 2025. I will call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting now open at 6 p.m. moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any opening remarks by any members of council? Seeing none, moving on to the adoption of the agenda with the additions or deletions. Madam Clerk.
Be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented, moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any questions in regards to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Again, seeing none, moving on to there is no public meeting or delegation tonight. So item 7.1, the adoption of minutes from previous meetings.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as presented. Regular meeting December 17th, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
All in or any discussions on agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving to the adoption of minutes of our committees and local boards.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont accept and approve the following committee minutes as minute for 21st, 2024 for issue purposes. Move Mr. McDonald, second.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Item 9.1, receiving our monthly staff reports and recommendations.
Be it resolved that the following monthly reports be received: planning, bylaw enforcement, building, fire, recreation and facilities, public works, CAO school renovation project. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Any questions in regards to our Deputy Mayor Densham?
Just a quick comment to our rec director. I really like the format of the notes that you make. It really helps understand exactly what's happening within the different rec groups and how they're reacting and stuff like that. I know there's been feedback from time to time on whether or not just a to-do list is interesting. It's interesting to kind of see what people do, but when you start to see the impact that it's.
Any further questions? Just on a note in regards to our leased area and the daycare over at the school. So there has that trend, or has it started? Are they starting to look at bringing in their stuff and in line with their opening up?
Yes, the contact phase, getting their delivery of their tables and chairs and bookshelves and things. That's January 20th. The staff will be in putting everything together. The floors have been polished. So it is ready for occupancy, and they are still planning to have children at the venue February 1st.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the reports? Motion is carried. Moving on to item 9.2 in regards to funding requests for play structures. Madam Clerk.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont approves funding replacement playground structures for Chrysler Recreation from the Deferred Revenue Community Benefit Fund in upset amount of $8,520. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Bajal.
Just a quick question. When I was looking through the actual breakdown of the structures, one of the notes that noted was building permits and concrete pads. Is there any concrete pads at all with these at all, or is this a cost that just won't be incurred?
Through the chair, Pierre, can you confirm? I'm assuming there has to be some type of foundation for the posts for each of the play structures.
No, we don't need the concrete. You frame to the knee, and then we move down
Was there additional cost with the installation?
Okay, but Pierre, if the structure itself is not just dropped it. It would have to be further down. It would have to be, there would not have to be a concrete foundation to support that from being displaced?
No, usually they don't, just the weight of the structure itself, they frame it at steel at the bottom, so everything is stacked and framed as a steel wider than the structure, and then they put the safety surface above it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm noticing on the quote that we were given, they have included $3,600 for installation charges, so there will be some charges, but it's incorporated in that amount.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Dencham.
So I was around when we built the original ARC agreement. And there was a quote in the report that talks about the repairs are split 50-50. And I think at the time, the intent was really, if there were a few $100s here and there, then even $1,000 or a few $1,000s, the township would split that with the various rec groups, keep it in repair. But one statement that's in the ARC agreement is all funding for new structures will be the responsibility of individual recreation committees and must be AODA approved before the installation. So it says all funding for new structures will be the responsibility of the individual rec committees. Part of the reason when we built the ARC agreement is these types of topics, especially when it comes to kids and playgrounds and stuff, really tug at the heartstrings. And so what we wanted to do when the rec agreement was built was to try to help make some of those decisions so that upfront everybody knew where we were getting. And I realized that over time, play structures and stuff, they get worn out and eventually they can get vandalized and they can get broken. If they're severely vandalized in a certain event, then I think insurance should be covering it. But once something has gotten to the point of disrepair where it can't be used anymore and has to be replaced, like I said, when we built the ARC agreement, the idea was to kind of set that specific line in place to say this is where we draw the line. So repairs, yes. Replacement, no, that's really on the rec groups. And I think part of the reason was because we saw coming down the pipe the huge amount of capital assets that we have to pay for into the future. And if I went back to 2019 in our budgets, and the amount that came out of taxation for recreation actually wasn't divided into recreation and arena in the past. So it was about, let's see, short of $400,000 in 2019 was a combination of the arena and rec, 440,000 in 2020, 440 again in 2021, 2022 and 23. I had to do some math on that to split them. They were around 550. 2024 and 2025, we're at $804,000 for rec and arena combined. And it's almost a 50-50 split between them. And then 2025, we're at 835. So it's almost double how much money we're having to invest into rec and arena. And I can only see that going up in the future in the sense that we have a lot of capital assets we're going to have to pay for. And so my fear is that, you have to be careful not to blur the line, especially now. So although I'd love to be able to fund this, I mean, recently we already dedicated the EDP fund of $31,000. We put that over to rec, and I would encourage you to tap into that if there's a way to do that. But I just don't feel like it sends the right message if we fund a new play structure. Yeah, I think it's going to blur the line. And if we have other play structures coming on the pipe in the future, to get some damage done to them, then again, the ratepayer is going to end up having to pay for that, whether they use it or not. So again, it's one of those things that tug at your heartstrings, but I don't know that I can support the decision the way it's laid out there.
And through the chair, if I may, and I see where the deputy mayor is making a point, and I made that point as part of the discussion process internally. Any playground equipment repairs are to be 50% recreation and 50% township. The circumstances here is that I guess the town or the community could have left those play structures standing after the vandalism, and it still would have technically been determined as repairs. So in the spirit and intent of this document, it's both the treasurer, the CAO, and the director of recreation that this would meet that criteria. They removed it so nobody would get hurt. I guess technically they could have left them up and we still would have been responsible for 50% of those repairs. So I think it's a very unique circumstance that brings us here, and I would argue that this is the same approach I would recommend if it was in Avonmore or Moose Creek. If it was, if they were damaged by vandalism and they had to be removed, I would still consider that as a repair.
Well, I
But
think
that's
a
just my
lot-
opinion.
I think a lot of the Avonmore stuff was in disrepair and it's been removed and replaced through the fundraising efforts of. And again, it's not to pit one community against the other. That's not the point. I think the fact is when a piece of equipment gets to a state of disrepair, whether it's damaged or not, if it's going to be replaced, if it's not going to be repaired, to me, the way I read this, funding for all new structures will be the responsibility of the individual rec committees. I think that was the spirit behind trying to draw that line, but that's my opinion.
And again, I'm trying through the chair, I'm trying to determine, and I wasn't part of the process in crafting that, but I think that would have reflected, you know, the natural life cycle of these pieces of equipment, not wanton vandalism would have basically rendered them unable to be used. That's just my opinion.
Through the chair, if I may, I'm the one that went and did the inspection, and a certified playground and planner was there also. These structure had to be moved immediately after vandalism because of the shape that they were left in. And that's why we had to remove them immediately. We had the option of, yes, like you said, we could have gone through the insurance. We got a $10,000 minimum that somebody would have incurred that cost of $10,000 minimum to go through insurance for a $16,000 claim. It's not worth it. Or fees would have went up for insurance. Go, okay, let's remove them and see how we're going to replace them. We did the same thing when we did the park renovation in Finch. They split the cost 50-50 with the damages to the structure that needs to be repaired. So that's the way it states. It states as under repair. This case was a vandalism that caused this to be removed. It'll be up to council to decide if this justifies as repair or justified as new structure. If they want to vandalize them, they wouldn't be putting new structures in there. They're already there. So that's the cause of why this is brought forward by Treasure Recreation.
That was for McDonald.
Just to be clear, the 8,000 and change was proposed to be funded from a reserve of some kind, like a deferred revenue of some kind.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it's from the deferred EDP Community Benefit Fund.
And so I guess I can make my 2 cents. So I think I see both sides. So what Deputy Mayor Densham is stating, the biggest issue that North Stormont faces is looking at our community centers. So the committees that we're talking about, what we're dealing in, Monkland, Berwick has a small one, we try Avonmore, Moose Creek. There's not many municipalities around that are sustaining. I keep repeating. I worked in that area, but you look at the township of Russell that have 2 fire halls. And when it comes to their halls, they have 2 halls. One that's, so we look at what we're trying, and when we get into is we see how it was feedback at that time, how we're reading it now, how it's interpreted, but at the same time, if we try to, so it starts off there, we've got the 8, there's also the future where we're growing. So when you look at whose mandate is it to make sure that we are proud, North Stormont's a good place to grow. You got young families coming in, and we do have a park that supports that. So I don't know, is that, if it's left to our resident or our community volunteers, does that fall, and they don't follow up with it? Do we just say, oh, well, we don't, and not support it? So that's the question we have to ask. There's each severance that we get parkland revenues from. Parkland, like we could possibly look at purchasing, well, we can purchase land. If there's nothing there, what do we call it? a patch of grass, saying there's our park. So I don't know where we draw the line and how we come up, but it should be something, I mean, to bring back to better discussions to understand, because we are growing, and by growing, we set a precedent. Well, once that precedent is there, there's a small development that possibly could be happening in Finch. All of a sudden they want, and where do we draw that line to try to sustain what we're so for tonight, the motion of this is on the table. I think there's more to this. It's not just Avonmore whenever they were, so I know there was new structures. Did they utilize the 50/50, or was it just I think they got a grant.
Through the chair, they had a grant, and any new structure added to a park, it's 100% responsibility of the recreation.
Okay,
That's the way it's written in the ARC.
okay. So tonight is one thing for that 8,000. I think there's bigger discussions to be had moving forward, because this is not going away once we pass this. I think there's way more to come to this, and we have to, as Steve mentioned, we have to kind of draw what our responsibility are going to be, and then moving forward with that. So with that said, for tonight, any further questions? That side, Councillor McDonald.
I appreciate the deputy mayor's comments, and especially his, since in the past working with you, that it's a repair. In this case, although clarity would be beneficial, because we do not want inequity, and we do not want future councils having the confusion. So I think if it means we maintain what exists, and if you expand or increase, that's different. That needs to be more clear. But in this case, I would agree with the interpretation that the staff have made in this particular stance. Just for
Only reason it came forward is because of that circumstance. If this would have been an addition of new structure, this wouldn't have been brought forward, as the ARC agreement clearly states. Any new structure got to be 100% subsidized by the recreation facility. In this case, it was because of vandalism, so they request if there is funding available to replace those, as they had to be removed.
And with that said, like I said, something has to happen, I think, with 150 new houses that were put in the last 5 years, and now we're looking at this new development coming forward. Something has to be made available, I think, to moved and seconded. So the motion's on the table, so I'll bring it to a vote. So who's in favor of the motion as it read? Who's against? Motion is carried. Moving on to our municipal bylaw, so 10.1, bylaw number 02-2025 in regards to temporary borrowing.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 02-2025, being a bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 14th day of January 2025. Moved by Councillor Shane, second by Councillor Badelli.
Thank you. So Kim, this amount hasn't changed, like with our tax levy kind of, does it, because I think that amount's been there for probably the last
Through you, Mr. Mayor, basically, this is a line of credit that allows us some leeway if we're stuck between when we receive taxation and when we bill it. In this case, council has also previously approved to use the line of credit to fund the school until this building is sold, and then that $1 million will come off the line of credit and a formal loan will be taken out. So it's a formality, it's a line of credit that's there just as a safety net, and that's why it has not changed.
So it's not an outage, it's what you're comfortable with, and that's what you just kind of put forward. I don't think we've needed it in an emergency fashion for that purpose, so I think I'm good with it. Any questions from Deputy Mayor Densham?
Well, thank you for the clarification. I wondered what the $1 million was, whether that was carried over from previous year. How much interest do we tend to incur for the period of time that we're borrowing that money? Do you have a handle on that, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's prime, I think is 5.4 4.45 as of today, I believe. We're paying that. I just borrowed against this like just before Christmas, so I haven't even done 1 month's worth of this.
Not for the school. I'm thinking more when we just our general practice. Do we borrow money for months at a time, or is it usually?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, we usually don't borrow against this. We haven't had the need to.
Okay.
It's just basically a safety net in case we do.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, the first line was here. So bylaw number 03-2025 in regards to our records retention.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 03-2025 being a bylaw to repeal and replace bylaw numbers 44-2016 and 04-2018 to provide a schedule of retention periods for the records of the corporation of the township of North Stormont be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 14th day of January 2025. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Thank you. Any questions? Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. In the one section, I think it was document retention policy section 5C1. I wasn't sure whether it was referring to databases that were stored or documents that were stored, because there was something that was talking about the fact that before it was destroyed, we had to have a description and some other information, who authored it, et cetera, et cetera. And I wondered how big of a task that was going to be for a document, like whether there were going to be a lot of documents or whether it's more just a database. I'm trying to find it as well.
You provide a response as to the record required to,
Oh, to just, so what happens,
Destroy
so
them.
through the chair, my understanding, which we haven't got to that point in our new records management system, but my understanding is that and once it's ready for disposition, there will be an email come to, in this case, it would be the deputy clerk as appointed from the clerk, that this record is up for destruction. So then what happens is you take that email and you go to the department head or the head of the department and you say, okay, these records have come up for destruction. Are we okay to destroy them at this point? And once they give the okay, you can sign off on it and then the record is destroyed. There also could be appeals. So in a case, for an example, like for like a case that's gone before legal or for freedom of information requests, if there is an appeal, there is a date that you can change. So once you put that date in, that your destruction date is as of, like, the file is closed as of this date, so then the retention starts from there. But if there's an appeal, you take that date out and then you leave it open until your appeal is closed, and then the retention would start from there. But there's always an email that comes up for destruction. So it's never just deleted or destroyed before it's approved from.
Yeah, it was this one where it said, though, specifically in 5C, it was saying a written description containing the extent that such information is available. You have to document the following before you destroy it. You have to say the title of the system, the identification of the business unit responsible for the creation or use of the data, a brief description of the system's purpose, where possible, contents, lists of the information being destroyed. It just felt like a really cumbersome process. If that's something we have to do for a lot of information before it gets destroyed. I know I'm terrible. I don't throw stuff out, and my wife will often clean house for me on my behalf. But I also know we're probably bringing, if I remember right, we're bringing a lot of files over, probably because they weren't prepped ahead of time for easy destruction. And I think that's what you're trying, the cycle you're trying to take us into.
Yes.
But is this specific piece of the process going to make it very cumbersome so that we just say, you know what, we don't have time to do all this documentation, so we're just not gonna check this.
So through the chair, and not actually seeing one as of yet, this is this was from the counties. It's exactly what the counties had passed for theirs, and I believe the other municipalities that have gone with this company for the records management. So I can't say exactly what it says. I believe it comes up and it says the file and there is information on it, but not at reaching that point, at seeing that. I can't really answer on how cumbersome it would be, but this is the process that has been set up by the counties and most of the groups using the same records.
I hope it's specifically for a database, which is more something that you don't destroy very often, and it's sort of a one-off, and so it's not, that's my hope. I just wasn't sure whether. or not
Yeah,
that's
and
the
so
case.
through the chair, we've also had discussions about third-party softwares like complaint systems or things like that. We are going to bring that forward at the clerks' meetings and at the CAO meetings that at this time, there's nothing set in stone for that third-party database information. So we are looking, the counties are looking to help us in getting a policy set for third-party softwares and things like that. So that is to come in 2025.
No, I was just going to reiterate that the retention bylaw reflects the best practices as the deputy clerk has already indicated. And this is complementary and a requirement as we're phasing in our new data management process or program. So this is something that was we've neglected up until now, but it's most townships and most municipalities do have a framework for when records will be destroyed, and it's long overdue. And thank you to the deputy clerk for taking this on.
So I have a quick question. It's not really, it's for the whole package. Have we been following our own procedural bylaw on this as what we, because the fact that we are moving from here to there, so is there an opportunity for the move that stuff that, so I know I'm asking a lot, but I mean, is that something that could be looked upon?
Through the chair, we are looking at potentially purging prior to our move. We will be destroying any documents that we have the capacity to destroy, but we are going to be using this as our benchmark. And I've already sent a couple of emails to all of the department heads that is requesting that Leanne participate in their review process of all of their documents stored downstairs before anything is destroyed.
And last, so I'm in my work environment is similar to this where we're land surveying and retaining all your records so that when there's dispute between property lines and the first running of a line, it establishes a lot so we're similar to where we've got filing cabinets, but we are moving into the digital world where everything's being scanned and the paper is being, so are we kind of have a.
Yeah, so through the chair, so this is right from the information professional. So this company has worked in this field for 30+ years and works with, I would say, probably 95% of the municipalities across Ontario for records management. So what they do is every year they go through municipal legislation, provincial legislation, federal legislation, and they give us best practices for destruction dates, and you'll see in there with the citations, it's where it's coming from. So these are the best practices that the majority of the municipalities are using. So I feel very confident in following what we've been given as the best practices. There is the opportunity for the departments, if there is a certain document that they feel the disposition or destruction date is not accurate, it can be discussed and it could be changed from time to time as well.
And through the chair, I think the mayor was asking if we were going to start transitioning to exclusively electronic
I'll
scanning.
use a prime example. So our building department, in regards to building permit, following up, okay, let me see your building permit to what was allowed at the time, and to right now with paper copies, there is a time where you're sitting there saying, I can't find it. I don't have now that we are in that digital world, everything to do with that building permit should be scanned in a file so that if in 10 years from now, somebody relates and says, where's Deputy Mayor's new shop, or not Deputy Mayor, the Mayor's new shop that he built? Well, here it is, and everything can be pulled out. So that's what I'm kind of coming back to, making sure we are moving properly to the new digital world and not having to keep the paper copies in hand as long.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the finance department has their payroll records, cash receipting, tax postings, currently all digital. The only thing we haven't done digitally is accounts payable, because we still get a lot of paper invoices, which would involve scanning. But we've been trying to move forward, and actually it saved a lot of binders.
so through the chair, I'd just like to follow up that there is a transition period of the paper documents. So once all of our departments are on the system and moving forward, I would like to see kind of a drop dead date that say January 1st or March 1st of 2026, that any documents after that, everything is completely scanned. So if we get a hard copy of an invoice, that will have to be scanned into the system. And then we would only be scanning permanent documents or documents that are of a certain period we have to keep them. Other than that, they will be boxed up and a destruction date put on them the old fashioned way. But going forward, once everybody's on board and comfortable with the system, there'll be a date where that everything should be scanned into the system if it's a file or record. So we won't have the paper copies. That can be just destroyed immediately once it's filed and saved.
Perfect. Any further questions, Councillor Bajelli?
I wanted to bring something up. I was going through the actual bylaw and then the schedules and also the best practices. And one thing that I noticed that we may, and I would like to see us address, something near and dear to my heart, that being security footage. It is not listed anywhere in here at all. Obviously, last year I was pretty passionate about certain privacy issues that go along with that. There is federal legislation and guidelines that are readily available. Obviously, I don't think they put it in because municipally it's not something, one, that you don't see too often, but as we say, as we're moving to the digital age, this is becoming more and more prevalent. We're having cameras at all of our public buildings. We need to have a policy in place to deal with the privacy with respect to that and the destruction after a certain time limit of said footage.
There is a video surveillance policy that was introduced in 2019, I believe. And it does have the retention guidelines for 30 days. If they're not requested, and they are automatically expunged. So that is in a separate standalone video surveillance policy.
Just not sure if that should be actually factored in, like I said, into something as far as, because this is will become more and more tagged to what is actual township records, what is township property and what is not. I think that's one of the key questions on that. Is this footage, is it township property? And if so, then not only just destruction after a certain amount of request, but after a certain amount of time that should be deleted, as they are in other areas. Obviously, in certain cases, like I said, it will never go away, but to prevent certain things like that from happening in the future, I think we need to take a proactive position on it.
And through the chair, I want to be cautious in how I approach the response to the councillors. There was extensive dialogue with legal counsel on the item that we're speaking of at this moment. It was considered a public document that could be released. I agree that it was posted on another platform that we certainly wouldn't endorse. Could we run into that again? Yes, we could. But again, I can certainly review the video surveillance policy. It is 5 years old. But again, this was vetted through the IT department when it was passed, when we introduced our first camera system in Moose Creek. But yes, there is a retention timeline. And again, if it's not requested, it's automatically recorded over, unless there's an FOI request.
Just to add before I go, so like this here we're dealing with in front of us is basically just the record retention.
Correct.
So maybe what you're saying is we should be reviewing our bylaw, like the.
Absolutely. I believe through you, Mr. Mayor, they go hand in hand. Technology's changed light years in the span of 5 years. It changes on a yearly basis. The platforms and the mediums themselves are constantly evolving. So a 5-year rule policy on that is something that we should be.
So through the chair too, we can also follow up with the information pros. Just inquiring about that as well, but it is currently on the list of bylaws to be reviewed, that policy as well.
Any further questions? Seeing none, so the motion is on, so all in favor of the motion is carried. Moving on to item 11, which is our correspondence, 11.1 to 11.8.
Be it resolved that as listed as items 11.1 to 11.8, moved by Counselor Shane, seconded by Counselor Bajelli.
Thank you. Any correspondence that wants to be discussed? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting our correspondence, motion is carried. Business, moving on to highlight of the night, what we've all 14.1, so the 2025 second draft budget package. Do we need a
So,
motion?
through the
or-
Chair, we don't have a resolution. It's just basically on discussion, in hopes that we can, agree on the second draft and bring it back for formal passing at, January 28th meeting.
So,
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Marjorie.
as per direction, we were going to discuss all the changes that we were going to make and come up with a final document. We did good. We got it down to 4.98% tax increase, which is $19 per 100,000 of a $50 per $1,000 assessment, the total tax rate. What I've also done with this 4.98, it allowed me to put 31,000 to reserves as well, so that's a good thing.
if I can just stop you, don't tell me you put it to our working reserve. So did we? put
Actually,
it-
I said per the mayor's request, I
Yeah.
put it to the working reserve. No, it's going to the fleet reserve is where it's earmarked for now, because that needs some help there. I do want to also let you know there is a change that's being requested under capital for public works. The Ashburn Road at $354,000 in total is being asked to be deferred. And the Finch Roxborough boundary asphalt to be done. That's in order for the counties to take over the winter maintenance in the future. So there was talk of that, and also taking the money that was earmarked for Ashburn. Part of it goes to that, and then the parking lot at the school does require some work as well. So we're not asking for any more money. This is more of a scope change, and whatever is not spent would be put to reserves at the end of the year. So it's not a change, doesn't affect the tax rate or anything, but it is a scope change that council needs to be aware of that's being requested.
So before questions, so Blake, if you can just, so does that take us right to the 8th? So right now we made the portion up to 3, 4.
Yeah.
So, 6, 7.
Through the mayor, yes, we're almost at 6, 7. And after the presentation by the county engineer to council on the direction of the Finch Roxborough boundary, myself and the county engineer discussed about winter maintenance to reverse that. We're looking after winter maintenance that the road is a class 3, and it should be a 12-hour response on condition wise, and with a single staff and the time frame it's going to take for the counties to evaluate what way they should go in taking over the certain roads or whatever, that discussions had that I proposed, and the county engineer agreed that the quicker thing would be for us to pay them for the maintenance on our section of the road, and they take over their own section back over. Because we actually go from 15-6 back to County Road 13 and right into Newington. And we have a 9-kilometer stretch in the middle of it, which is a high traffic class 3 road because of the commuter route. And the Ben DeHaan said, yes, that would be most likely the easiest thing to get done, hopefully before next winter.
Any questions? See,
In general or on this?
okay, right now on this, and then we'll go back to Kim, or just quickly, so what's the timeline for what's it taken away from Ashburn as far as what's the the plan moving forward there?
Aspin's been on the list for the last couple of years. It's a lot lower volume road. If we can't maintain it on the hardened surface treatment, we can always pulverize or scarify, apply gravel, and provide minimum maintenance standards on that, turning it back into gravel if it needs that it gets too expensive to maintain a hard surface. So, and the section that we're talking about on Fish Rock Road is actually surface treatment that is been put down in 2011. And with the traffic volume and the plowing that we have to do on that road for insulting, it's December. It actually is breaking apart, and potholes can, over a rainy period, and the traffic volume can get quite large just in one day. So it's something that would be I predict be most feasible for long term on that road with the traffic volume that we have now.
And Ashburn, can it sustain leaving it with that surface treatment that we have without pulverizing and potentially addressing that next year without, because it's just when you have a level of service on the road, it's very difficult to pull back and say, oh, we're going backwards and
yes, that's the game plan right now. The road has to be reconstructed. It's beyond the point of a single surface overlay to maintain it longer. It has to be completely reconstructed, culvert replacements, and a more granular surface. So to redo it, so it's not really the only thing we're going to lose on Ashburn Road, and council will know before we do anything on Ashburn Road, we're going to maintain it the way it is until we take a report to council saying, well, this has become a high maintenance surface that we're spending X amount of dollars just to maintain minimum maintenance standards, and a recommendation say, well, temporarily put it back in the gravel surface and treat it like a gravel road until the budget allows to reinstate it. We did the same thing with Smurl Road. I don't that was, I don't know if Deputy Mayor and Mayor remembers that we actually it got to a point where we just turned it in, but we also gave notice out that we're going to council's advice, and they said, well, whenever we do a section back there, we're going to redo that road. But it get to a point where we couldn't maintain it, and it was more of a hazard to the municipality than it was to just turn it back into gravel for a year.
And if we were to do it, would we have pulverized and redo it at 350? Was that just a layer of hard surface, or were we going to reconstruct the road prior to?
Ashburn Road, we were going to do a complete reconstruction.
Okay. So if we pulverized it, it would be just maybe we do one step, and then the intent would be to bring it back to a surface treated road.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Any questions, further questions for Blake? Seeing none. I do have a question for Blake, but it's a different topic. So did you want to just, is there other changes or?
Well, I think there was some talk about some engineering services.
Yeah, so did you want to go first on?
Sure.
Your question?
I have two questions, actually. First one for Blake. Blake, how long does a snow plow last?
We've been trying to, and I've been around a long time, but we were trying for 20 years. Now, the new and computer system, it gets very expensive whenever you have multiple failures and you have problems where I don't believe we can get 20 years anymore out of a new truck, just because all the computer systems and electronics is in it that it's going to get too costly to try to keep it on the road.
The reason I'm asking is because we're looking to debenture, Kim, our new snow plow out to 2040, which is 16 years. And I wondered whether or not that was, will we be paying for it after we've replaced it?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was told the amortization should be 15 years on a plow. So that's the max we can take the loan out for. It shouldn't be 16. If it's 16, it's in.
Well, okay, 15, then whatever, sorry, I got that wrong then by 1 year. But if it's gonna last 10 years and we have to replace it, are we gonna be paying for it 5 years after it's gone? Is kind of my question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the hopes is it lasts 15, and if it does not, at least we can sell it and get some money for it to use it towards a replacement. That's my understanding.
My issue to that same note is it's not the one to last 15, it's we have 7 of them.
Well, yeah, then
That's where next thing you know is that's replacing the one we're buying, the one that we're,
Yes.
but there's 6 other ones that are sitting there falling into, and this fleet assessment that we need, and the reason why we're putting the 31 in there is it just will become more and more difficult. And the nice feature of having reserves put in for example, with the fire reserve, where right now we're looking where that pumper in Finch looks attractive with what we've got coming in 2026. Remove that, it's scary to think, okay, here we go. And if you look at the last fire truck that was not purchased the right way, where I find Finch will be done the right way. So anyways, same thing with snowplow, and it's just a matter of making sure that we stay on top.
the other question I have is, or it's really an observation. If my timing is right, the $300,000 index, $300,000 we get from EDP, which is a 20-year contract, and the 20 years that we're going to get from GFL, they're both going to run out somewhere around 2040, 2041. So if they both run out around the same time, we're talking at least $2 million of the money revenue gone. And that makes me a little nervous for the terms ahead of us. And I'm wondering whether or not, and maybe you've already thought of this, Kim, whether or not we can start to coordinate the expiration of some of our borrowing so that it kind of happens coincidental or just before that dip. Because again, that's like, if $38,000 is 1 percentage point, that's like a 52% tax increase we're going to have to hit the public with, barring anything else that happens.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, the whole purpose of that 10-year plan was to show council just this. Because if you're working in isolation year by year, you don't see the peaks and valleys as such. So the hopes is to plan so that when one comes off, one goes on. But in the past, we have deferred items and keep deferring and trying to band-aid them. So now we're kind of at the catch-up point. So the hopes are that in future, we can put more monies to reserve so that when these things do come up, we take things off the long-term debt and we hopefully have reserves to pay for them. So we're not having to borrow.
So, and again, I'm not an accountant, so please push back on me on this one. But when I look at Moose Creek Community Hall expiring in 2044 and the Chrysler Fire Hall expiring in 2044, and the snow plowing, okay, it's around 2040, and the new school renovations at 2050, would there be anything we can do to kind of make them all expire around 2041 for now, and just to kind of keep it safe for the future? Or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those have already been set in stone as far as the term of the loans, especially when you're dealing with Infrastructure Ontario. You're not given an option to pay it down. You're not given an option to change the terms. It is what it is. So you're locked into there till 40. That's why for now, excuse me, for the school, the thoughts were to borrow like through a lending facility, because you can pay them off. Sometimes you have a penalty, or you can change the amortization term, say from 40 years to a 5 amortized over 40, but the term is only 5. So in 5, you can renegotiate that and hopefully pay some of it off. But the ones that are in existence, especially from Infrastructure Ontario, they're locked in.
Yeah, like I say, 2041 makes me really nervous for people down the pipe. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to the next item? So seeing none. So in regards to the item of engineering, so that's on me. When we did our budget day, I thought, oh, we're all good. So I think everyone's aware. I would love to see, and I've been meeting at Roma last year. I think some of you were with us. Algonquin Bridge, but looking at getting a crossing bridge for, so right now, the stream of funding, we have one of our employees that keeps track of all this stuff, and we're hoping to look at different funding opportunities. But really, to get there, we have to have a plan, get everything worked out with prices and stuff. My only concern is the embankments or whatever, that the concrete abutments at the that the old rail crossing was going by, is needs to kind of be engineered or looked at just to evaluate what we have before we move any further. So I would be prepared through the EDP or the trying to think, is it EDP fund that was?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Community Benefit Fund, yes, there's
Okay.
money sitting in that deferred revenue
So-
account.
And the intent would be to possibly get that analyzed. And then from there, we can get prices, we can put the full package together to hopefully get attraction. I'll maybe tell where we are. So we're meeting with a gentleman, hopefully next week. Our rec director has been in contact with, maybe Pierre, you can elaborate with the rec, or not the rec, but the trail system in Prescott Russell, which we would connect to with St. Albert. That keeps moving on. So Pierre, if you want to maybe add on that.
Yeah, through the chair, we got a communication from our senior advisor for regional from the Ministry of Tourism, put us in contact with the Regional Trail of Prescott Russell, which is a circuit of Eastern Ontario. Because the trail in Kreiser merges with the Trail of the Nation, which Nation was part of the trail system as Prescott Russell. We'll be meeting them to see if we can put this all in conjunction where it becomes part of the trail system. This way it might release some funds as far as the Ministry of Tourism and help us out with the trail. So we're gonna meet this gentleman next week, hopefully next week, and we're gonna meet the ministry or senior advisor from the Ministry of Tourism also next Friday or the following Friday to have a meeting about this grant coming up.
So basically, it's just to move things forward, and I don't think it's gonna be a big task, but that way we can move forward. So Councillor McDonald.
Just a thought, I know that just for cost, this is just if we go ahead with it, South Nation often has to inspect the dam for concrete status, like a similar inspection. I'm wondering if they need to have it done this year or next year, if they could double up and if it would be cheaper to go in together, because there's basically one or two engineering firms that do these kinds of concrete assessments, especially around water. So I'm sure it's gonna be the same type of person, just might make it more affordable. And also South Nation will eventually need to be involved if any work's done there, so you might get them sort of on board early for the conversation.
Well, that's something that, so the engineering firm that was directed where we were directed towards came from Algonquin Bridge. They said these guys, they're in Ottawa, and but I definitely would take any kind of information from your end, understanding, the aspect of the watershed, and working with Craig and Pierre just to make sure that we're.
Under the chair, yes, CAO's office did chair to for just to get the estimate on the actual cost so we can submit. Our grant match partners are indicating that we probably have a very strong application. We can kind of pass it. But yes, we reached out to both the engineering firm to make sure that we have accurate pricing. We also reached out to our LNG partners because again, this is not going to be an isolated benefit to North Stormont residents. It will be a much broader benefit for our more vulnerable sector, low impact exercise, etc. So
That's the thing. I just think this is maybe going to be expensive, and the more partners and people that might be able to help in kind. So Ben DeHaan, Sandra Mancini, you've got a bunch of engineers that either build bridges or build concrete structures in water. I mean, if you can get everybody working together, I do worry about the cost of it long term. And of course, grants are great, but it's not cheap to put a bridge. The other thing is Regional Tourism Office. I've actually called them this week in my professional capacity to talk about cycling infrastructure and grants that will come related to cycling. And I think there's a lot of interest in connecting all these trails, basically Montreal to Ottawa, Prescott, Russell, SDNG, and looking at railway beds and things like that as the future for these great opportunities to bring cyclists in to our businesses. So I think there's probably funding coming if we have a cycling related lens on things, and that's what I'm looking at for our parking lots and things at work. Can we say we're a cycling facility and facilitate that, get more grant funding? So I'm supportive. I do worry about the cost of it, and I'm trying to think of ways to make it a little more affordable for everyone.
Through the chair, we'll try and leverage every opportunity to either partner with internal and external stakeholders. We will be coming forward at the next council meeting with a resolution in all likelihood, if we have all the data available, to see if council will endorse the community commitment once we get the actual figures from the engineering firm, but that's to be determined. But I have an expectation that we'll bring that forward on January 28th.
Well, like I said, the opportunity is there with regards to Roma coming up, a great networking area. And I know, assuming Mr. Dahan or, potentially could be there, Sandra might be, but this is the opportunity to get those discussions, and talking to one might open the door somewhere else. So that definitely is beneficial. So to try to incorporate, especially our local South Asian community that are it's their waterway that goes beneath us. So to see any advantage we could have possibly in an engineering study, having their input would be beneficial. That's all.
And like, not too many people are aware, but like the CA will act as a consultant to a municipality. So you may be able to hire their geotechnical engineer at a very much reduced, a nonprofit rate. So little things like that might help, and it's in their backyard. And I think they have quite a sufficient amount of engineers there. And if the projects are flexible in timing, it helps them if they're not busy with the floodplain. So as a municipality, we could better leverage, I think, those partners for really, really, really affordable rates, but they will not work for the public. They can only work for a municipal partner. So anyway.
Thank you. Any further questions? So are we looking for, is there anything else that I'm missing as far as Ashburn engineering? Is there anything else that you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there isn't anything else. It's just if it's council's direction to go for the engineering. I did talk to the recreation director. We were thinking a maximum of 10,000 be used from that community development fund, a maximum, but only things that are required will be moved at year end. It was just a suggestion.
Because I had numbers that were, again, verbal numbers that were given to me that did not reach that. But again, I don't, like I say, I don't know where we stand. But like I said, I'm prepared just to get that portion done so that we can hopefully go for funding and get something in established. And I'd like to have the bridge in. We got 2 years to go, so let's get the ball rolling and see where it takes us. Any further discussions as far as Ashburn Road? Did you get your direction? Is council in agreement that we're going to tend to? I believe that I had discussions with Mr. Dahan, so the purpose of would be a great benefit. And I think we're to have a one-man show trying to meet the minimum standards of the class 3. I think it makes it hard for small municipalities to attain that. So I think it'd be a wise investment.
Just to be noted, through the mayor, just to be noted that there is 2 culverts on that section, and a knoll that should be taken down. So when we do an asphalt lift on it, we'll have to pad those areas, and basically it should be good for the number of years that we expect. Then basically just be an asphalt overlay on top of that would be, and we don't want to go into the ground again. So it's not just the asphalt bill, but we think we can do it in the office with the money we have. We do, like the culverts, that is all in-house. The knoll that most of you know about is all in-house. So it'd be some gravel, a couple culverts, and that section will be rehab, that we don't have to go below the existing new layer of asphalt for many years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do I have direction for up to $10,000 to be moved from that community development fund for the bridge engineering, because it's not gonna have an impact on the taxes, but when I do the final documents for council to approve at the next meeting, I need to be right.
So basically, it's not it's not a resolution, so we're just in the nod to see what it brings us. So we'll be getting the information prior, I think, so we can kind of move along as we move once we talk to the engineers.
So.
So for now, I'm okay. You can put
Okay.
10 for your number. Yes.
Thanks. So based on all the changes that were made, council does have that list. It's come in at 4.98, which I think is a very reasonable and went a long way to get there, but I think it's very reasonable and I can have those adjustments made and
And we still have the 31,000 that will be slid over into the fleet.
through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, correct.
Thank you. Okay, so
So
now we have one more little change in regards to our fees, yeah, and charges. So go
So-
ahead.
So through the chair, I just wanted to make council aware that in our discussions at our special meeting, January the 8th, we brought forward a draft fees and charges bylaw. We did miss on Schedule E for the Parks and Recreation. It does say that all of our fees except for building and public works should be rounded to the nearest dollar. In the LCIS insurance policy, we missed changing that over. So those fees will be set to the nearest dollar. And that will be brought forward at the next meeting to pass the draft bylaw. If there's any questions, I can answer them right now.
Are we rounding down or up?
Some of them are, some end up rounding down and some round up.
50 cents over 50 cents.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's going to the working fund.
I guess. So there's nothing, that's just,
No, it's just to make council
To make
aware
council
that,
aware, so-
that we will be making.
so we're
the
looking
change.
4284 and we're going to 43. So I think we're good. I think we're good with that. Thank you very much. There is no new business, moving to our scheduled meetings or upcoming meetings. So we have our second meeting in January on the 28th of January, regular council meeting at 6 p.m. as well as our only one meeting takes place in February, which will be February 25th, again at 6 p.m. Is there any closing remarks from council? Seeing none, moving on to our ratification bylaw.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 04-2025 being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its regular meeting of January 14th, 2025. Be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 14th day of January 2025. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any, well, I guess there's no discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And last, our adjournment. 7:02.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 7:02 p.m. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
And all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Kim, I hope you've got everything you need to get, and I'm looking forward to ratify and get this budget approved on the 28th. And this way we can move forward with tendering or anything like that. So that's the intent. Is staff good with that? Perfect. So thank you very much for people listening. Thank you for council, and everyone have a good night. Thank you.